Hey there, Stephanie here from Michigan Alliance for Families. I am excited that you tuned in to learn more about parent advisory committees. We're going to take a look at why they exist, what they do, and where to find them. So we're going to look at how the committee is set up, what they do as far as your intermediate school district plan, and what content they deliver to the families that are a part of the parent advisory committee. So we're going to spend some time exploring all of these things. Most of the time when we look at special education law, we start with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, our federal civil rights law that provides special education, called IDEA. IDEA does not require a regional or local special education advisory committee. They do require a statewide special education advisory committee, which we have here in Michigan called SEAC, Special Education Advisory Committee. However, when we look at our Michigan administrative rules for special education, which define how we're going to implement IDEA and that we can do more than what's in IDEA, we can never do less. So one of the things that we do that is more is that MARS, our Michigan Administrative Rules for Special Education, do require that intermediate school district boards appoint a parent advisory committee. When you're looking for these, the legal citation to these rules are in R340. So if you're seeing R340, it's a clue that it's a reference to the Michigan Administrative Rules for Special Education. In this case, for parent advisory committees, I'm specifically referring to R340.1838. That's where you can find information about parent advisory committees. There is no requirement at all in IDEA or MARS for local school districts to form a PAC, although some local school districts have created them. They're sometimes called CPACs, Special Education Parent Advisory Committees. When we're looking at PACs, one of the first questions we need to answer is who serves on the PAC, where do they come from, how do they get appointed to the PAC. This is through the Intermediate School District Board. That's who appoints the members of the Parent Advisory Committee. Intermediate school districts are also called ISDs. We have them all across Michigan. Wherever you live, you do have an ISD that's like a regional group over local school districts. Sometimes they're called RESAs, sometimes they're called ESAs for educational service agencies, but there is an ISD where you live. So you can look that up and see what is your intermediate school district. That's where your parent advisory committee is going to live and be housed. The Parent Advisory Committee and its officers consist of parents of students with disabilities, where there's one rep from each of those local school districts, and that includes public school academies, sometimes called charter schools, that are within that intermediate school district. So at least one, unless no parent agrees to serve on the Parent Advisory Committee to represent that district or public school academy. Those local school districts, their Board of Ed or a public school academy board of directors nominate at least one parent to serve, and then they're appointed by the intermediate school district board. The intermediate school district board can also nominate like a third of the members, but they can't nominate more than an additional third. It has to be under that 33.3%. So we know that the ISD board appoints the members. That's not where the ISD's responsibility ends or where their role ends when we're thinking about parent advisory committees. They also need to make every attempt to assure that all types of impairments and all identifiable organizations of parents of students with disabilities within that geographic boundary of the intermediate school district are represented on the Parent Advisory Committee. We have 13 eligibility categories here in Michigan for special education. So we're talking about all types of impairments. We're talking about parents that have different experience, different eligibility categories for their students, different age students, that we want those varied perspectives on the Parent Advisory Committee. The Intermediate School District Board of Education may also recommend operational procedures for the Parent Advisory Committee to review and adopt. They may make those recommendations for the members to vote on. They also secure or allocate fiscal and staff resources. So they support the Parent Advisory Committee. There's somebody from the ISD that is getting the meeting space, helping plan the meetings, making sure that the Parent Advisory Committee can operate efficiently and effectively. What exactly are they doing efficiently and effectively? Let's talk a little bit about the responsibilities of the Parent Advisory. Again, these come from MARS, our Michigan Administrative Rules for Special Education. It's our 340.1838 is where you're going to find this. So the responsibility of the Parent Advisory Committee includes determining and documenting in writing the organizational structure of the committee. So how the committee is set up, how it's going to work. They also participate in the development of the intermediate school district plan and any modifications to the plan. And they provide input on any matter the committee deems appropriate to the improvement of special education services within the intermediate school district. And when we talk about this a little bit, we're going to talk about planning content of what you want membership to talk about and how you're choosing those things that are areas of input that are appropriate for the improvement of special education services. Let's dive into that first responsibility, determining and documenting in writing the organizational structure of the committee. When we're thinking of organizational structure, it's up to each Parent Advisory Committee itself to determine and document how they want to work. Do they want to have officers? And if so, what are those responsibilities? When are they going to meet? How are they going to share their meeting? How is that information going to be available to members and to the public? What are their voting procedures? How long do people serve? What are the terms of office? What other things do they need to define in their organizational structure? All of these pieces need to be part of what each ISD decides in writing, where they document their organizational structure. Other things they want to think about are meeting logistics. How often does the committee meet? What's the schedule? Is it on the first Wednesday of the month? Always. Is it on the third Tuesday of the month? Always. Is it once a quarter? It doesn't need to be monthly. The actual Parent Advisory Committee needs to decide on when they want to come together and what that schedule is. Are they going to do it in person? Are we all coming together physically? Are we coming together on Zoom? Are we coming together in a different way? And then how are we sharing that meeting information? Once that structure is defined, that needs to be shared with all your members and any prospective members. That's the information they need when they're considering joining, is what that commitment looks like, what those operational details look like. You also want to set really clear expectations about what the group is doing. And one of the really important things that Parent Advisory Committees do is look at long-range systems change for all children, not just one. That most of us, when we start out learning more about special education and going to any meeting of any sort, we're going to meetings about our kid. We're talking about me. We're talking about my family. And one of the things with the Parent Advisory Committee is that shift from me to we. We are looking at all students who receive special education supports and services. We're looking at varied ages, varied viewpoints, varied disabilities to better understand the system and how we can improve it. We're looking at long-range systems change. And that's a shift for families. That's a shift for parents of how do we start to get that perspective? And to get that perspective, we prepare for meetings. We read the agenda, we read supporting documents, we come prepared to contribute to the conversation, and we come ready to listen. Also to prepare, we're reviewing the minutes from the last meeting. We're ready to discuss any questions or vote on approval from those minutes. And we're ready to share our perspective and listen to other people. Like, that is why an advisory group comes together, is to share that information. Whenever I'm entering a group, I want to know how it works. Every committee works differently, but I want to know, is it formal or informal? Like, are we following Robert's Rules of Order? And that's something you can totally Google and get a quick guide of what that motion and second and everything looks like for that formal Robert Rules of Order for public meetings. Or is it a really casual, we just have a quick conversation and move on? How do we make decisions as a group? How do we provide advice as a group? Who's going to receive the advice of the committee? And then what happens with that advice? What are the expectations for follow through with the advice? I also want to know where I get the information from. Who coordinates the meetings? Who's the contact person? Is there a backup person for that? Who typically runs the meetings? How do I get on the agenda? Who determines the agenda? Like, none of this you want to be a puzzle for your members to figure out. We want to share all of this information out directly with members. If you're joining, ask these questions so that you have that information and you're ready to be boots on the ground running. So we talked about parent members and we talked about operational structure of the committee. Let's talk about that A in Parent Advisory Committee, the advisory part. PACs don't make decisions. They make recommendations. They provide guidance. They provide input. They provide perspective. They cannot take action. So they can make recommendations, but they can't make the rules. They can't make the laws. They're providing advice. One thing that I think is important for all parent advisory committees is thinking about the purpose of why you come together, what your mission and vision are going forward. Does your parent advisory committee already have a purpose, mission, and vision? And if so, these should be driving your meetings. These should focus your members. If not, it's a really valuable conversation to have and discuss development. When we're thinking about purpose, we can ask, why are we doing the work? If we don't do it, what's going to happen? Who benefits from the work? Who loses if we don't do the work? And then the vision is what the future looks like, what the big dream is, what the goal is. And the mission is what we actually do. It's the who, what, and why. It defines the immediate goal that helps us stay focused on the plan. And these three pieces, your purpose, your mission, and your vision, can bring your membership together and help them stay focused. It can define what things you're focusing on at meetings and how you're spending your time. So I do encourage, think about those. If you don't have them, if you do have them, revisit them during your meetings to keep your members on track. One of the other responsibilities on that first list from Mars is that the PAC provides input on the intermediate school district plan and any modifications to the plan. So once your PAC is defined, how they're going to meet, when they're going to meet, what that's going to look like, and what the responsibilities are, one of those things they need to have on their agenda is input on the ISD plan. So each ISD is required to have an intermediate school district plan for the delivery of special education programs and services. That plan has to include all the things you see listed on your screen here. And we're just going to go through these to give you a little bit more information about what they look like. The ISD plan signatures has to have a signature from the intermediate school district superintendent, the ISD superintendent, that signifies the approval by the ISD board. There's also signatures from the superintendent of each constituent local district and chief executive officers of each public school academy and the chairperson of your parent advisory committee. Those signatures signify their involvement in the development of the ISD plan. It's not approval, it's involvement. We also have to have information on public awareness and child find. So there has to be a description of the public awareness and child find efforts which are completed. Those are to identify, locate, and evaluate children suspected of having a disability, and a list of who you can contact if you have any questions or you want to request an evaluation. That has to be in the ISD plan. It also contains a section specific to diagnostic and related services that are available throughout all of the ISD and who provides those services, and a description of special education programs and services, which ones are in each district, which ones are ISD programs, which ones are virtual programs, and those are each listed in a separate section. There has to be specific qualifications for the ISD for their paraprofessionals. When we're thinking of paraprofessionals, we're thinking of teachers' aides, healthcare aides, bilingual aides, instructional aides, program assistants for programs with students with cognitive impairments, all of those and more could be paraprofessionals, but we have to have that description of what their qualifications are. There has to be an identified public agency responsible for the transportation needs of students with disabilities to attend programs and services. There has to be a description of how we distribute millage funds. And the Parent Advisory Committee is described in the ISD plan. There's a section that's specific to the PAC that says the role of the PAC, the process for appointing members, and the ISD staff who support the Parent Advisory Committee. Every ISD plan also has to have information on how to identify and find surrogate parents to support students when they need that. That IDEA does require surrogate parents. Our ISD plans in Michigan define how to find that information. If you're interested in learning more about surrogate parents, we do have a video just on what's a parent that talks about that as well. In the ISD plan, there also is information on how to file an objection when you don't agree. Any constituent district or the PAC can file a written objection regarding the ISD plan. That written objection has to specify the portions of the ISD plan that are being contested. They have to provide a reason for the objection and propose an alternative provision, an alternative change. An objection can be filed against an ISD plan which has already been approved by the state superintendent or one which is under review by the Office of Special Education. So there's not a time when it's like too late to do this. The ISD Board of Education has 7 days to send a copy of the objection to the Office of Special Education, the constituent districts, and the PAC by certified mail with a return receipt requested. The ISD, constituent districts, and the PAC may file a response to the objection with the Office of Special Education before a hearing occurs. A hearing officer schedules a hearing to be held within 30 calendar days from when the Office of Special Education received the written objection. So no later than 30 calendar days after the close of the hearing officer will issue a report of finding of facts, conclusions of law, and recommendations to the state superintendent. This is just another one of the rights that are built in, that you have the right to file an objection to the ISD plan. We know what the PAC is, we know how often they meet, we know they are involved in the process of developing the ISD plan. Now let's think about topics that are important, those things that impact students with to receive special education supports and services. This is planning your content for the year. This is figuring out how you're engaging your membership, what that looks like, what things they need more information about. One of those expectations that I talked about is moving from the me voice to the we voice. And that's something that is a really important skill to help grow in your parent membership of your Parent Advisory Committee. That they want to hold the perspective of and effectively represent parents of children with all disabilities to ensure their needs are being met, and that the federal law, the state laws, the district rules and policies, that everything is in place to meet the needs of those students. That means that there's some stretch for families, that a lot of them start out with a really great knowledge base of their own child's disabilities and their own child's strengths and unique challenges. But trying to expand that to think of a broad array of health, orthopedic, mental health, other disabilities, that you're not just representing a specific disability group on the committee, you're representing all children that receive special education supports and services. So sharing the knowledge and experience and skills that you have, and then taking in that additional information. One way to do that and to be an effective committee member is to better understand current outcomes of children with disabilities in your intermediate school district and your school district. You also want to better understand staff and parent concerns that impact those outcomes for children with disabilities. So how do we look at outcomes? Every state develops a state performance plan. You see the results indicators on the screen here. This state performance plan is submitted to the U.S. Department of Education. This is information you can absolutely look at and see how we're doing on these. You can dive into a school, you can dive into a district, you can go to My School Data to get recent data There's always a data lag in data collection and then data being analyzed and then being published. But you can look at recent data for your school, for your local school district, for your ISD. And one of the things that you may want to set as an expectation for members of the committee is that you're examining the outcomes for your district and see how they align with the goals that are established in the state performance plan. Part of your committee's role may be to recommend activities that help your district meet the requirements of the state performance plan. You may want to dive in as a planning group or as a full group deeper into some of the annual data, which is the APR, the annual performance report, that is the data from the state performance plan. So you may want to look specifically at how many students receive special education in your district, or what percentage of students are in regular education settings most of the time. Has that percentage changed? If it has, why? What percentage of the students are in segregated settings? What percentage of students in your district graduate on time, like within that normal timeline? What are your graduation and dropout rates? When we look at students with disabilities, are they graduating on time? How many students in your district drop out of school? How many of those who drop out have disabilities? And what kind of disabilities do they have? Like, we can dive into all of this data to better understand outcomes for our students. Then you can have really great conversations about what steps your districts are taking to increase graduation rates or reduce dropout rates, what's already happening. We may also want to look at student suspension rates in your district. What percentage of students suspended receive special education services? How many students are placed in interim alternative education settings? Is that for behavior? Why are they getting that placement? What does that look like? My School Data is the state of Michigan's official source for pre-K, K-12, secondary, and workforce data to help residents, educators, and policymakers make informed decisions to improve student success. The site offers all sorts of different ways to view information. I told you could look statewide, you could look at your ISD, your district, your school. Data is presented in graphs and charts and trend lines and all sorts of different ways to be meaningful. I encourage you to check out the data in your area and to check out myschooldata.org to navigate and gather some of this data. One of the things parent advisory committees are involved in currently is discussions and input on LRE monitoring, that the parent advisory committee is a part of this process across Michigan, that the first cohort for LRE monitoring was in the 24-25 school year. Cohort 2 is 25-26, cohort 3 is 26-27. That typically these are in person in addition to your regular meeting. They review the IDEA requirements for least restrictive environment and then dive into conversations of what this looks like currently and what families are currently experiencing. Other topics you may want to consider for what things are important to bring to your membership to think about those issues that are impacting students that receive special education supports and services. We talked about surrogate parents, and I mentioned that defined parent video that is on our YouTube channel for Michigan Alliance for Families. You could watch that video as a group. You could have them watch the video. You could talk about what that process is. You can define that a little bit more for your members. You can have local organizations present about what they do and how they support students in the area, or have like assistive technology experts come in and talk about what assistive technology looks like and how it's so much more than just an electronic device. I hope you are now walking away from this video with a better understanding of what a parent advisory committee is, who the members are, what they do, and how you might want to influence yours. If you want to find your own parent advisory committee, you're going to go to your intermediate school district. Remember, it could be called a RESA or an ESA. You do have one wherever you live across the state. If you have any trouble finding yours, or want some more information, do not hesitate to reach out directly to your regional parent mentor. They are there to help. That is what we do. We are here to support you and make sure all of these different pieces of special education make sense and you're involved in the places where you want to be connected. So don't hesitate to call 800-552-4821. You can check the website to get the email for your local parent mentor. We also share information regularly on Facebook and Instagram, and you can check out the other videos on the YouTube channel. We are here to support you. So bring us the questions, call us, you're not bothering us. We want to help. Michigan Alliance for Families is an IDEA grant-funded initiative of the Michigan Department of Education, Office of Special Education, the Michigan Department of Lifelong Education Advancement and Potential, and Michigan's Federal Parent Training and Information Center, funded by the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.